I call on my colleagues today. Let us seize this moment and do what is right.
What an honor it is to serve as the chairwoman of this committee.
Congresswoman Lowey joined the Appropriations Committee in 1993. Although she had other opportunities, she chose to pursue appropriations, where she could work on her diverse interests because she believed that it was the best place to give more people a chance at a better life.
The bill we vote on today reflects an effort to strike a new direction in programs that are vital to the lives and livelihoods of every family in this nation.
Congresswoman Lowey's early years in Congress focused on vast and varied issues, all rooted in her district, and concerns expressed by constituents. In her first campaign, she ran on a promise to clean up Long Island Sound. Pollution was hurting local fishermen and the recreational economy, and the environment was in serious danger. In 1990, she created EPA's Long Island Sound office to clean up and preserve this local treasure. Year after year, she secured more and more funding, from a few $100,000 to more than $14 million today. She has secured federal funding for an endless list of priorities that have improved the lives of her constituents. Throughout her career, she's funded transportation hubs and commuter services, bridge and road safety, economic development and job training, early learning and health centers, school safety, senior centers, flooding and disaster relief, and more. And even after congressionally directed projects were stopped, she worked hard to bring home funding for key local priorities, ranging from medical research at New York institutions, to local Head Start programs, to record-breaking support to build the Mario Cuomo Bridge, where the Tappan Zee once spanned the Hudson River, and countless others. Perhaps no success is more emblematic of her fighting spirit than her taking on the alcohol industry to combat drunk driving.
Too many preventable deaths and injuries are occurring on our nation's roads. Enough is enough. Join us. It's time for the liquor lobby to put people's lives ahead of profits.
When she couldn't get the .08 standard fully enacted in 1998, she turned to appropriations, passing a withholding of transportation funds for states that didn't enact .08. Today, it's the law of the land and has saved countless lives. Another hallmark commitment of her early years, which has continued throughout her long tenure on the committee, was her unwavering focus on women's health, from breast cancer research to the right to choose. In that work, she developed some of her most enduring Capitol Hill friendships.
We were partners in progress for women on the committee. The issues that related to women's health, we advanced drastically. One of our first accomplishments was to get the advance for the funding for women's cancer issues up to $100 million. And once you get there, all kinds of other things are triggered in. So that was sort of the breakthrough. We had shared values, we listened to each other for the best possible approach, and we enjoyed it very much.
It was evident even before she took office that Nita, as we all called her, was going to be a force. She believed in the responsibility to be accessible to her constituents and to then find solutions in Washington to the challenges back home. She had an innate ability for building consensus. She never shied away from working across the aisle. She's awfully persuasive and always persistent. No one should be surprised that Nita became the first woman in history to chair the House Appropriations Committee, breaking a glass ceiling in the process. but the reward for her has always been simply doing good.
Nita Lowey has always shown a steadfast commitment to the children of this country. For decades, she has fought against proposed cuts to crucial programs, from Head Start to school lunches, and has increased investments in critical initiatives, such as Pell and Title I grants, out of a belief that all of America's children deserve an excellent education. But nowhere was her focus felt more strongly than in the realm of after school.
As a member of the House Appropriations Subcommittee on Education, I have fought hard for more funding for after-school programs with my colleagues. These programs are absolutely critical, and our schools should all be comprehensive schools, in the morning, in the afternoon, in the evening, and the weekends.
In 1996, when I had the honor of serving as the Congresswoman's Chief of Staff, not many people understood the transformative role that after-school programming can have for our nation's children and families. That year, Congresswoman Lowey created a $1 million pilot project to provide safe, supervised activities after the school day, the very first federal after-school program. By 2003, it had grown to a $1 billion program with a waiting list, serving millions of children. Last year, its funding level reached nearly $1.25 billion, and it was renamed the Nita M. Lowey 21st Century Community Learning Centers Program, in recognition of the Congresswoman's early vision and dedication.
Hi, Nita. I want to thank you for being a dear friend and trusted colleague for so many years. I was honored to work alongside you for many years on the Labor HHS Education Subcommittee to expand educational opportunities. My objective of expanding full-service community schools and your work to grow after-school programs went hand in hand to ensure that our nation's children can grow and learn in safe, healthy, and nurturing environments.
She also understood the importance of public broadcasting to our nation's families and children, leading the effort to fight off proposed cuts to PBS 3 times between 1995 and 2011.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to take this opportunity to introduce to you today 2 witnesses who frankly weren't called and who are very relevant to this hearing as well.
We're here to say a special thank you to Chairwoman Nita Lowey.
We sure are. After all, she's a big reason we've had so many years of sunny days on Sesame Street.
Or is she a weather forecaster or something?
Arnie. No, Chairwoman Lowey came to Sesame Street's aid when we needed her help. And far beyond Sesame Street, she's worked hard to help girls and boys all over the world.
Wow. Well, she really is a hero. Hey,
Yeah.
we should thank her together, Bert.
Oh, yeah. Thank you, Chairwoman Lowey.
From all your friends at Sesame Street.
Bringing Bert and Ernie to testify is just one example of Mrs. Lowey's willingness to think out of the box to draw attention. She has never hesitated to use any tool at her disposal to fight for what she believes in and what is in the best interests of the children of our nation.
Congresswoman Lowey's commitment to children and to a better life for all people doesn't end at our nation's borders. For decades, she has maintained a strong commitment to responsible investments through our foreign aid bill that make the world better, safer, and healthier, while improving the security of generations here at home. At the heart of that work is providing a basic education to the world's children so that they may thrive and prosper, be healthier and resilient, and create a more stable world. In 2017, after more than 15 years, Congresswoman Lowey passed the READ Act, which required the first ever whole-of-government international education strategy. And as chairwoman of the State and Foreign Operations Appropriations Subcommittee, she secured the high water mark for basic education at $875 million.
Representative Lowey, I remember us meeting in 2017 on Capitol Hill. We discussed the barriers that prevent more than 130 million girls from their education, and also talked about what we can do to ensure all girls can go to school. I once again want to thank you for all the amazing work you have done. Congratulations on your retirement, and thank you so much for your service.
Our distinguished chair is admired and respected around the world because of her dedication and hard work in the pursuit of global development. She's educated many of us on the fact that basic education is fundamental in building successful development programs. Madam Chair, your efforts indeed have been heroic, and your passion and inspiration to all of us.
Funds appropriated under Title III of this Act and made available for assistance for basic education, as provided for in this paragraph, shall be referred to as the, quote, Nita M. Lowey Basic Education Fund, end quote.
I can't believe I was going to cut you off, my goodness, that's so very nice.
Congresswoman Lowey's vision for a better world extends to so many issues impacting vulnerable populations, including poverty reduction, HIV/AIDS, and women's rights. She's met with countless world leaders and traveled to the far corners of the earth to see both the need for and the impact of U.S. assistance and leadership.
And Madam Chair, I want to thank you for your visionary and your bold leadership as chair of this committee and our subcommittee, as you have constantly led efforts through this bill and throughout your leadership to ensure global peace and security throughout the world. And thank you for your friendship.
She's been a key person for making sure the Tibetans inside and outside Tibet have those resources for survival, culturally, religiously, in any way you might think as refugees, but also inside of Tibet. Very, very important work. Never could have happened without her. As a supporter of human rights, as a supporter of civil rights, as a supporter of the good causes and the good around the world, no one is better than Nita Lowey.
It is a cruel irony that a pandemic keeps us apart now, because it was a pandemic that brought us together nearly 20 years ago. The pandemic of HIV/AIDS. You oversaw and secured the funding, working with President Bush and so many on both sides, through PEPFAR and the Global Fund, helping to save 25.4 million lives, I think the latest statistic. I mean, there's millions of people who owe their lives because of how you conducted your life. Yeah, thank you. Thank you from the One Campaign, from anyone.
A stalwart supporter in Congress of the U.S.-Israel relationship, Chairwoman Lowey has been instrumental in securing Israel's annual aid package and in combating efforts to delegitimize the Jewish state. A champion for lasting peace in the region, Lowey has never given up on the goal of a negotiated two-state solution. The Middle East Partnership for Peace Act she's fighting to pass today would cement Congress's support for people-to-people programs and economic engagement between Israelis and Palestinians, ensuring a brighter future for both people for generations to come.
Another special focus of Congresswoman Lowey's has been on the needs and rights of women at home and abroad. Her achievements on women's health in particular have been tremendous. She was one of the first to recognize the disparities in health outcomes stemming from the lack of inclusion of women in medical research. That's why she was instrumental in passing the National Institutes of Health Revitalization Act to include women in Phase 3 federally funded clinical trials. In 1994, the House passed a Lowey provision to evaluate and close gaps in women's health curricula in medical schools. At the same time, Congresswoman Lowey was working hard to close the gap in funding for research on breast cancer, which took her mother and was striking clusters of women in the New York City region.
There has never been enough money at the NIH dealing with issues of women's health, and it's time to turn this around. Women are sick and tired of being second-rate citizens. They're sick and tired of having breast cancer being last on the agenda.
In her first year on the committee, she increased the funding 40%. And in the next 10 years, she increased it 250%.
Just 13% of the budget at the National Institutes of Health was dedicated to women. Research routinely excluded women. Even the lab rats were all male.
And what a wonderful 27-year partnership this has been. You, along with Pelosi and DeLauro, sometimes called the Delosies, made the critical contribution to NIH's clinical trials to insist that women would be included. And I'm happy to tell you it worked. And we're now over 50% of women in our trials. And thank you for that. That was overdue and you made it happen. And you supported research in cancer and diabetes and Alzheimer's disease and many other areas that we now are seeing great progress. You presided in those 27 years over an increase in the NIH budget from $10.3 billion to its current $41.7. That's not a doubling. That's not a tripling. That's a quadrupling, for which we are grateful and is the reason why science is advancing so rapidly. So thank you for your contributions. If NIH had the authority to grant honorary degrees, you would be at the top of my list. So bless you, Godspeed, and thank you from the bottom of my heart.
The Congresswoman is unquestionably a champion of women's reproductive health and rights. As part of her international work, she secured record levels of funding for bilateral international family planning, helping women around the world control when and how many children they'll have. And here at home, she's led that fight for American women.
Congresswoman Nita Lowey saved the Title X family planning program. It was in 1996. The Republican budget had eliminated it. What did Nita do? She sprung into action, created an ad hoc, bipartisan whip team, because she saw an attack on reproductive health and an attempt to deny access to people who need it the most. And she stood up, as she usually does, and she acted. It is her leadership, her grit, her determination, and she built a consensus across the aisle and saved this critical program because the amendment that she co-authored passed on the House floor.
In 1997, Congresswoman Lowey won coverage of contraceptive drugs and devices in the Federal Employees Health Benefits Program, which is the basis for the near universal contraceptive coverage for all Americans today, passed in the Affordable Care Act. And here's a lesser-known victory. In the minority, Congresswoman Lowey once persuaded a conservative colleague to accept a provision that required independent, external evaluation of popular abstinence and less married education programs. And when the research concluded they were dangerous to adolescents and an ineffective use of tax dollars, she led the charge to replace them with comprehensive teen pregnancy prevention programs. Nita Lowey is a champion for our work, and Nita Lowey is a trailblazer. It's such an honor for me to have contributed to her extraordinary legacy on women's health. It's the foundation on which we build to protect and advance sexual and reproductive health and rights at this critical moment in history. Women around the country and the world are grateful for her leadership, her accomplishments, and the example she set, especially for women like me, making our way in Washington.
And I've had the honor of serving in Congresswoman Lowey's office for almost 20 years, 16 of them as her Chief of Staff. Congresswoman Lowey never expected or planned to chair the Appropriations Committee. She simply worked hard to make a difference for her constituents, for those who most needed a voice, and for her colleagues when they needed help. Many of the milestones of Congresswoman Lowey's leadership have been marked by crisis. In 2001, she became the ranking member of the State and Foreign Operations Subcommittee, as well as the first woman and the first New Yorker to chair the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee. After September 11th, Congresswoman Lowey's focus on global and national security had new meaning, and her seat at the leadership table was critical. She helped shepherd $20 billion for New York's recovery and preparedness efforts, along with millions and millions in the years since for her district, New York City, and the state. In 2012, Superstorm Sandy struck just weeks before her colleagues chose Congresswoman Lowey as ranking member of the full Appropriations Committee. She became the first woman to lead either party on the committee as the recovery package was stalled in Congress. She rolled up her sleeves, got to work with leadership and her colleagues to deliver $60 billion for recovery and rebuilding. What an emotional, exciting, and proud moment it was when Congresswoman Lowey shattered the glass ceiling in the Appropriations Committee. And what a challenge to become the first woman chair in January of 2019 in the middle of the longest government shutdown in U.S. history. She delivered again with leadership, with collegiality, with skill, and with responsibility.
When you became the first woman to chair the committee last January, we were in the middle of a government shutdown. Your work in those first days leading the committee were instrumental in bringing that shutdown to an end. And in both of the past 2 years, the work we did together to ensure that the House passed appropriation bills to fund nearly all of the government before the end of July made it clear to Americans that the House was doing its job for the people. Those who know you understand that your indefatigable work ethic comes from a deep conviction that service in this House can make a real and positive difference in the lives of so many of our fellow Americans.
Of course, her first year as chair pales in comparison to the challenges of 2020. The early days of the COVID-19 pandemic hit New York hard, especially in the Hudson Valley. The demands on the Appropriations Committee to help stem the spread and mitigate its worst economic impacts were great. In Chairwoman Lowey's final year in office, the work of Congress and the places and the ways in which we do our work have been completely upended. And in what often have felt like desperate moments, she has led with strength, passing trillions in relief for families, testing, research on treatment, child care, and so many other needs fueled by this crisis. And she will leave Congress soon still fighting for the bold investments that can save lives and the livelihoods of so many millions. It has truly been a gift to have a front row seat to Chairwoman Lowey's rise in leadership, to see all that she's capable of achieving and how she does it, to witness the deep reverence and respect for her. Most of us would sink under our own weight if we took on as many priorities as Nita Lowey. There's no problem she thinks she cannot solve, big or small. She was a fierce advocate of the assault weapons ban and the Brady Bill. And on the Appropriations Committee, Mrs. Lowey was on the front lines of the battle against a provision that basically ended federal gun violence research. For 20 years, she fought to reinstate it, as children and parents feared for safety at school and as innocent people died. And finally, as chair of the Appropriations Committee, she and Chair Rosa DeLauro provided the funding for this vital research to identify ways to reduce firearms injuries and deaths.
My name is Pat Keegan, and I've been the district director for Congresswoman Lowey for more than 26 years. She's left her mark far beyond shaping policy in Washington. I joke that it's easy to know when she's been grocery shopping on a weekend, because on Monday morning she has a long to-do list for me, and I get flooded with calls from constituents she has told we will help.
When families visited her about the dangers of deadly food allergies, she was determined to help. Children's lives depended on it. And after a 5-year fight with the industry and enlisting Senator Ted Kennedy, Congresswoman Lowey enacted landmark legislation to list allergens on food packaging in plain language so that parents and even kids can know what's in their food.
When the housing crisis hit and people were losing their homes, when small business loans weren't coming quickly enough during the pandemic, when she learned of patients whose insurance wouldn't cover life-saving treatments, she personally browbeat CEOs until they did the right thing.
When I was going to be her ranking member, she said, welcome, we're going to bring this budget on time, on budget, and we're going to be best friends. She was always an honest broker. She would always respect my position and opinions, and we could always disagree without being disagreeable. Nita said, I want to set that as a tone so other people can really understand it can be done that way, and that's what happened. Nita, I want to thank you for your service. I want to thank you for your friendship, and you will not be replaced.
She is deeply genuine, warm, and kind to everyone. She is universally admired for her hard work, her dedication to her constituents, and her civility. But don't be fooled. Nita Lowey is undeniably a tough, shrewd, masterful legislator and politician. A longtime adversary on choice, Republican Congressman Henry Hyde once told the New York Times, I don't underestimate her. She'll make you smile while you bleed. We call that the perfumed ice pick.
She may not have a portrait in a committee room in the Hudson Valley, but she certainly will be remembered warmly here by thousands for the help she's given them, for the visits to their schools, workplaces, and senior centers, and for her dogged commitment to them in Congress.
Every day, Nita Lowey wakes up motivated by the notion that more is possible. Opportunity for little girls halfway around the world, security, prosperity for every American, no matter where you live or what you look like or where you're from, basic rights for women around the world. Chairwoman Lowey has shown that we can affect real change through the power of the purse. Madam Chairwoman, it has been such an honor for so many of us to be part of the great legacy that you have created.
When I think about what you have achieved during your time in the Congress, what we have been able to achieve together, it gives me hope and heart for this nation and this institution.
Congratulations, Chairwoman Nita Lowey, on your retirement. We'll miss your intellect, your kindness, your legendary negotiating skills, and your compassion.
On behalf of your colleagues, this House, and a grateful nation, thank you.
As Speaker of the House, it is my official privilege and my personal honor to accept Chairwoman Nita Lowey's portrait into the House collection, where it will serve as an ongoing reminder of her extraordinary career while inspiring the next generation of women to follow in her footsteps. Nita, on behalf of your many friends and colleagues in Congress, thank you for your decades of extraordinary effectiveness, always with a smile, and your true friendship to all of your colleagues. Your pioneering leadership has been a blessing, leaving a beautiful legacy of progress for the Congress, for the people of New York, and for all Americans. Thank you also to your wonderful husband, Steve, and the entire Lowey family for sharing you with the Congress and the country for so long. We all wish you the best for a future of health and happiness. Congratulations and thank you.
Thank you all for joining me this evening to celebrate my 32 years in Congress and 28 years on the Appropriations Committee. I am so grateful to everyone who has supported me throughout my career, especially my family. To my outstanding current and former staff in Westchester, Rockland, and Washington, and on the committee, my achievements are your achievements. And of course, to my colleagues, especially on the committee, where I made some of my best friends and partnerships and debated my favorite rivals on some of the hardest fought policy battles of our time. Chairing the House Appropriations Committee has been the most demanding challenge of my professional life. I am extremely proud of our accomplishments over the years and our ability to remain civil and lead when the country needs us most. Now, I am thrilled to present to you the portrait of the first chairwoman of the House Appropriations Committee to join those of my esteemed male predecessors for the last 155 years on the walls of the committee hearing room.